Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2023 film The Conference. It's a Swedish film and it's available on Netflix, which is where I watched it. So I've seen Swedish films before, I've seen Swedish horror before, but I think this is my first Swedish slasher. So if you're someone who's just into slashers in general, and I know there are plenty of people out there who are like, if it's a slasher, I want to watch it, I would definitely recommend checking this film out. It's solid. I didn't love the film. I didn't hate the film at all. It's a pretty solid film, and I do recommend checking it out, especially if you like slasher films. So, directed by Patrik Eklund, who also did Flicker, We Got This, and The Gambling Scandal. Written by Eklund as well as Thomas Moldestad, who did Cold Prey, which I have seen before. Actually, that's a Swedish slasher then. Never mind. Cold Prey 2, Magic Silver, Tainted, and Leave, which I've also seen Leave. Didn't really care for that one. And this film is also based on a novel by Mats Strandberg, who did the novel The Circle, that the film The Circle was based off of. Again, it's a Swedish film, so there are subtitles to it. I know I had done a review for, actually I don't know if it's out at this point on my channel or not, but I did a review for the Saudi Arabian kind of horror film Naga, and that was on Netflix, and Netflix had done a dub track as well that you could use, but for this film they did not do that, so it is just subtitles, so know that. But it's worth watching. Quick synopsis. This is literally about a bunch of coworkers who kind of go on this secluded retreat. It's like a working retreat, basically, where they have to work on all this stuff to finalize the building and opening of a, shopping center, in essence, that they just obtained the land for. So, like, the next day, this all takes place in one day, so the next day after, they're supposed to kind of do the groundbreaking for it and all that stuff, and it's a slasher. So people start getting killed because there's a slasher on the loose. And it is this question of, like, who's doing it? Why are they doing it? Who's going to get killed? Who's not going to get killed? That type of stuff. So it's a pretty straightforward slasher. I did see who it was going to be coming kind of a mile away. So it's not anything super surprising, but it's a solid slasher. It's really what it comes down to is, do you enjoy solid slashers? If the answer is yes, then you probably want to watch this movie. So just letting you know. The opening credits scene is a mix of relaxing and artistic as well as horrific. It's a very interesting mix. The music is kind of beautiful. The camera work is very slow and artistic. And then they're showing you, like, panning over a pretty horrific, terrible scene. So I love that kind of dichotomy of terrible and wonderful at the same time. So I kind of like that feel that they bring to this film, especially right out of the gate. There's immediately a nice humor to the film, which lets you know not to take things too seriously. This is kind of one of those tongue-in-cheek slasher films, which, honestly, I feel like slashers work best that way nowadays because there have been so many slashers, and especially if they're not going to do anything super different and unique, then having that kind of humor to it and it being very tongue-in-cheek kind of makes sense. It's very much like Thanksgiving. I think Thanksgiving very much got it right. Like, have some really good humor in it and have some really great kills and some great gore, and you'll be covered, basically, because you're probably not going to do anything super different. And this film kind of is like that. Although I will say the humor, if you do a comparison between, like, Thanksgiving and The Conference as far as humor goes, I think the humor in Thanksgiving was a lot better. The Conference, there's some good humor here and there, but it's not consistent. Like, some of the humor really doesn't land that well. But part of it also could be a cultural thing, because obviously I'm not Swedish, so there may be some things that are more just geared at people who are Swedish who would kind of get that joke versus me not really getting it. The camera is pretty consistently moving, which I love. That's a very engaging thing to do with camera work for a film. And, I've said before, I'm a big fan of Mario Bava, who had a lot of camera movement throughout his films, his filmography, sorry. And I just love that. Like, it's a very cool stylistic thing to me, and it keeps me engaged. I think it keeps other people engaged, even if it's just kind of like very slight movement. I mean, just having things kind of stationary, it's just not that interesting. So having things kind of moving, but not moving too much, granted, is nice. And that just leads to another thing. It's just, in general, this film looks good. It does have that kind of overdone at this point horror movie bleached color palette where everything is just very drab color wise. I would have liked to see them go more bright. I think that actually could have added to the kind of fun, tongue-in-cheek feel to it if everything's like really kind of bright and happy looking, yet there's like terrible things going on. I also think it could have made the kills look a little bit better, because the brighter the blood, the better, in my opinion. But it just gets so dark that it just looks like sludge at some point when you have this bleached color palette. So, but the film looks good. Cinematography is wonderful. I thought the directing was quite well done. So, a lot of technical good things. Also, the acting is quite good. I don't think there were any performances that I thought were like shaky at all. I thought that everyone was good to quite good. So it's a really good cast. They did a nice job casting everything. Each character definitely has their own thing, and they really do a good job, especially in the beginning, of establishing who each person is and what their relationship is to the entire group. And it's not like all a bunch of stock characters who you don't really feel for or have any interest in. I guess that's a little bit where it's kind of different, because a lot of slashers, it's kind of like, okay, here's some people. We're going to tell you like one thing about each person. They're just basically going to be stock characters because they're going to get killed. And, you know, whatever. It's about the kills. It's not about caring about these people. That's not the approach here, and I do appreciate that. So that was cool. There are some really playful cuts in this film, which I really enjoyed. You know, something where like someone gets killed and then they cut to like a sloppy food item, like something getting slopped onto food, like it's supposed to be mirroring the blood that was happening in the previous scene. So like a few cuts like that, you can see why I say they're kind of like playful. I like those things. That's kind of like a wink at the audience, keeps it with that whole tongue-in-cheek feeling. So I like that. The first on-screen death is pretty good and lets you know what to expect. It's plenty of blood, but not heavy on showing the actual practical effects. One of the things I really felt was lacking with this film is really getting in there and showing in really gory, messed up detail the actual practical effects of the death scenes. There's plenty of blood. They have blood flying all over the place, and that's, you know, all well and good. But I just wanted to see a little more over the top with the practical effects. You know, maybe they just didn't have the budget for that. I understand that. But, you know, going back to a film like Thanksgiving, like, at this point with slasher films, that's kind of what people are expecting, because you're not bringing anything different. But I say all this, and I don't know what the slasher landscape is in Swedish film. So maybe this is something more unique when it comes to like Swedish horror, specifically Swedish slashers. The music in this is a bit over the top. If you've been watching my channel long enough, you know I'm not a fan of that. I don't like it when they have the score just like screaming at you for a lot of parts in the movie. Excuse me. And this film does that, unfortunately. So that kind of takes me out of it from time to time. It is annoying, but that's also kind of a personal thing. I know that doesn't bother a lot of people, but I'm always going to bring it up. You hear so much corporate BS from characters that you actually start to get annoyed with it, which I think was a conscious effort to kind of make the audience feel the way a bunch of the coworkers are feeling, where they're just like getting fed all these canned corporate lines, and they're just like rolling their eyes and just like, oh my gosh, I've so had enough of this. So I think it does get a little bit annoying, but I think it's kind of effective with, you know, making the audience feel the way that they should be feeling in order to kind of sympathize with some of the characters in the film. Yeah, so that's my feeling on it. The killer slays with this kind of funny nonchalance. So I do think from that perspective, the person they had playing the killer did a really good job with body language. You know, when we talk about great body language with killers, especially slashers, we talk about Kane Hodder, who gave a lot of style and like interesting walk and, you know, mannerisms to Jason Voorhees. And I think that the person they got for this killer really did a nice job in bringing a lot of good body language to it. But it's not like super serious and like dread-filled and tense. It's more of like this kind of funny nonchalance. And I really did enjoy that because it also goes with what I was talking about, this whole tongue-in-cheek feel of the film. There's definitely too much pointless chit-chat that ends up slowing the movie down. That is one of my big problems with it. The movie is definitely too long for what it is. It's like an hour and 40 minutes with credits, and it's just there's way too much talking that they don't end up needing and not enough doing. You really do get to these stints of the film where you're just like, are we going to see anyone get killed? Like, are we actually going to see what this killer is actually up to at this point? Or are we just going to ignore it for long stints of time? I understand that they need to build some of these characters up and kind of do a little bit more with the story, but let's be honest, there isn't much of a story to this. So the fact that they take as much time as they do, I feel like is unwarranted with all the chit-chat going on. So that really needed to be taken care of. And the pacing is not the greatest with this film. It really needed to be cut down an okay amount. I feel like the killer is pretty obvious. I already kind of said this. I guessed it very early on. I think it's very obvious. It's very easy to tell. And there's a pretty awesome looking cinematic moment at the end of the film. Everyone will know what I'm talking about. It's a very important part of the film at the very end, and it's done in slow motion, and it looks awesome. And it kind of mirrors the beginning that I was talking about. That's kind of this like artistic, beautiful, like cozy, relaxing scene, but it's something horrific. And I love that. I mean, it's so cool. This film actually, in a way, does remind me of the film Severance from the United States. If anyone's seen that one, I think it's from like the early 2000s, and it was kind of the same thing. It was like a work retreat to the middle of the woods, and there's a slasher killing everyone. So very, very similar film. I don't know if they took any inspiration from it or not, or it's totally unrelated. I don't know. But out of 5 stars with half stars in play, I thought about going 3.5 on this film, but I just don't think it's quite there, so I am going to go 3, but just know that I was close to giving it 3.5. So if I did quarters, it'd be 3.25, but it's solid enough, you know? I think the other thing is it's kind of hard to impress me with slashers at this point. Just saying, because they're pretty, like, they're stock films. Like, there's a lot of things that just feel the same in all of these films, but I think it's worth checking out. So, at this point, if you have seen it, go ahead and put it down in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on the film, and we'll start a dialogue on it. Do me a quick favor, hit the like on this video if you want to help me out with that YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to my channel if you want to give me a thank you for putting out all this free content, and you can hit the notification bell button if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos, which I'm doing a lot of work on those at this point. So support me, help me out. I appreciate that. I don't want your money. I just want YouTube's money. You know what I mean? But anyway, thank you everyone for taking your time to check this video out. And until next time, keep it brutal.